The room was already tense when Senator Ted Cruz leaned forward. His voice sharpened like a blade. He wasn't asking questions. He was setting traps, delivering interruptions that cut across Crockett's every sentence. Cameras flashed. Microphones caught every syllable, and those watching live knew they were witnessing something more than a political hearing. It was a battle of will, wit, and endurance. Cruz had a strategy. He'd done it before. Talk over, speak louder, keep pressing until his opponent either stumbles or breaks. 6 times he interrupted Crockett, each time with the same smug grin that suggested he thought he had already won. To him, it wasn't about truth, it was about dominance. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't flinching. Her eyes stayed fixed, her voice calm, even when he sliced across her answers. She wasn't giving him the satisfaction of frustration. Instead, she measured her breaths, choosing silence where others would have exploded. That silence wasn't weakness. It was precision, the kind of stillness that comes before lightning strikes. By the 6th interruption, viewers across the country were leaning forward. Social feeds were already buzzing. How long will she let him get away with this? When is she going to unleash? The anticipation was electric. Every interruption stacked tension like kindling, waiting for the spark. And then, as Cruz leaned in for what he thought would be his final, crushing interruption, Crockett's expression shifted ever so slightly. Not anger, not defeat, but the kind of quiet smile that signaled a storm was about to break. She had given him rope. She had let him expose himself in front of millions. And with the 7th response, she was ready to flip the script, not just on Ted Cruz, but on the entire narrative of who holds power when truth collides with arrogance. This wasn't just another political spar. This was about respect, about voice, about refusing to be silenced. And Crockett's next words, her 7th, unshakable response, wouldn't just shut Cruz down. They would shut down the entire room. The countdown had begun. Every great clash has a rhythm, and this one was no different. The interruptions weren't random, they were strategy. Ted Cruz knew exactly what he was doing. By cutting Jasmine Crockett off again and again, he was trying to dominate the rhythm of the exchange. To make her seem defensive, scattered, small, he wanted the cameras to capture a woman boxed into silence while he thundered over her with rehearsed sound bites. It was the oldest trick in Washington. Talk louder. Talk longer. Talk faster. Drown out your opponent until the audience forgets they even exist. But what Cruz underestimated was the power of patience. Crockett wasn't rushing to force her way in. She wasn't clawing for a second of airtime. Instead, she was letting him stack the evidence against himself. Each interruption wasn't just disrespect, it was arrogance on display. And the millions of people watching could see it clearly. Her restraint was calculated. Her silence became its own weapon. Each time she was cut off, the contrast between her poise and his chaos grew sharper. The viewers began to notice it too. Hashtags lit up online, "Let her speak" and "Cruz meltdown." The court of public opinion was already tilting, and Cruz had no idea. The tension was building towards something inevitable. He thought he was burying her beneath interruptions, but in reality he was digging his own hole deeper with every word. And when Crockett finally struck back, the silence would snap into thunder. To understand Ted Cruz in that moment, you have to understand the performance he's perfected over years in Washington. This wasn't just a senator asking questions. It was a man who built his career on playing the loudest voice in the room, a politician who thrives not by persuading, but by overwhelming. Cruz's interruptions weren't born in that hearing. They were the product of a long history of grandstanding, from Senate floor speeches that stretched into hours to viral confrontations carefully clipped for social media. Cruz learned early on that dominance in politics often comes not from substance, but from spectacle. His supporters loved it. They called him bold, unshakable, unwilling to bow. But behind that reputation was a darker truth. He leaned on interruption and intimidation because the strength of his arguments often couldn't stand alone. He didn't build consensus. He bulldozed dissent. That day, as he cut Jasmine Crockett off 6 separate times, the script was familiar. He wasn't trying to reach clarity. He was trying to rattle her, to reduce her to a soundbite he could later mock. He had done it with witnesses, colleagues, even reporters. The Cruz playbook was simple. Control the narrative by controlling the microphone. But what he hadn't anticipated was that Crockett had read that playbook too. She understood exactly what he was doing, and she wasn't playing along. While Cruz thought he was staging his latest viral takedown, the cameras were capturing something very different. A man so desperate to hold control that he revealed just how fragile his grip really was. Cruz's arrogance wasn't just visible, it was exposing him, brick by brick. And Jasmine Crockett was quietly preparing the moment that would make it all collapse. To grasp why Jasmine Crockett didn't break under the pressure, you have to know who she is and where she comes from. Crockett's rise wasn't polished in the safety of privilege, it was forged in the fire of real struggle, the kind that teaches resilience, not entitlement. Before the bright lights of Capitol Hill, Crockett walked courtrooms as a public defender, fighting for people who had no one else to stand beside them. She represented clients who couldn't afford fancy lawyers, who were often dismissed before they ever had a chance to speak. In those moments, her mission was clear: to make sure voices that the system tried to silence were finally heard. That experience hardened her. She learned patience. She learned composure. And she learned that sometimes the most powerful statement isn't the one shouted in anger, but the one delivered with precision at exactly the right moment. It wasn't just her legal background that shaped her. Crockett's story is also one of perseverance in politics. She didn't enter Washington with the safety net of dynasties or the backing of billionaires. She carved her own path, driven by the belief that justice belongs to everyone, not just those who can afford it. That's why interruptions don't shake her. She's been silenced before, underestimated before, disrespected before, and every time she's turned it into fuel. When Ted Cruz leaned in with his smug grin, cutting her off again and again, he wasn't facing just another colleague. He was facing a woman who had made a career of holding her ground against forces far greater, far meaner, and far louder. Her calm wasn't weakness. It was the confidence of someone who knows the truth will carry her further than theatrics ever could. And that day, sitting across from Cruz, Crockett wasn't just representing herself. She was carrying the weight of everyone who has ever been told to sit down, stay quiet, or know their place. That's why her 7th response would matter so much. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a declaration. She was about to show Cruz and the entire country that silence doesn't mean surrender. It means preparation. The tension in the room had reached a boiling point. Cruz leaned forward yet again, his voice rising, his words spilling out faster than the stenographers could keep up. He wasn't asking questions anymore. He was issuing accusations disguised as inquiries, interruptions dressed up as authority. "Answer the question, Congresswoman," he barked, slicing into her mid-sentence, not even waiting for her to finish her thought. The smug smile returned. That practiced look of confidence meant to project dominance. To his supporters, it was familiar theater. To everyone else, it was transparent disrespect. By now, Crockett had endured 6 full interruptions. Each one was a performance of power, a reminder of how women, especially women of color, are so often treated in public. Life spoken over, diminished, dismissed. Cruz thought the volume of his voice could substitute for the weight of his argument. But what he didn't realize was that the room was turning against him. The murmurs grew louder. Staffers shifted uncomfortably. Even some of his colleagues began to avert their eyes, sensing the imbalance in the exchange. Crockett remained poised, her hands folded on the desk, her gaze unbroken. She didn't match his volume. She didn't flinch. She didn't give him the reaction he was pushing for. That silence, that calm, was louder than his shouting. It told the room and the audience watching at home that she was in control of her narrative, even if he controlled the microphone. And then Cruz interrupted her for the 6th time. The arrogance was complete, the trap seemingly set. But what he didn't know was that Crockett had been waiting for this exact moment. The 7th response was coming, and it would be nothing short of devastating. The room fell into a strange silence as Ted Cruz cut her off for the 6th time. His voice echoed with certainty, as if he had finally buried her beneath his interruptions. But then Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, her eyes fixed on him, and with a calm that sliced sharper than any shout, she began her 7th response. "Senator," she said, her tone steady, deliberate and unshaken, "if you'd let me finish even one of my sentences, you'd realize the facts are already against you." The words hit with the force of a gavel. The chamber shifted. Cruz froze for a moment, his confident smirk faltering ever so slightly. Crockett hadn't just answered him, she had reframed the entire exchange. She wasn't the one being cornered. She was exposing his tactics for everyone to see. She continued, each phrase more powerful than the last. "You don't silence me by talking louder. You don't win an argument by interrupting. What you've shown this room is not strength, it's fear. Fear of what happens when the truth is finally heard." Every word was precise, chosen with the weight of someone who knew this wasn't just about her. It was about every person who has ever been cut off, talked over, or disrespected. Cameras zoomed in. Cruz's face said it all, eyes darting, lips pressed tight, the confidence evaporating in real time. Crockett had done what few could. She turned silence into power, interruptions into evidence, and disrespect into her most devastating weapon. In that single response, the narrative flipped. Cruz wasn't the aggressor anymore. He was the man exposed, undone by his own arrogance, and the chamber knew it. The seconds after, Jasmine Crockett's words landed felt like an eternity. For the first time all day, Ted Cruz didn't rush to speak. The man who had interrupted 6 times sat frozen, his silence louder than any of his booming interjections. The room shifted with it. Lawmakers glanced at each other. Staffers stifled smiles. Even the press gallery seemed to lean forward, as if they'd just witnessed history unfold. And outside the chamber, the ripple effects began instantly. Social media lit up like wildfire. Within minutes, her Crockett clapback trended nationwide, followed closely by Cruz silenced. Clips of the exchange spread across TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, each one replaying the exact moment his smirk cracked, and her composure transformed into a thunderous takedown. Commentators jumped in immediately. Pundits who usually sparred over every issue found rare agreement. Crockett had owned the moment. Cable news anchors replayed the clip on loop, analyzing Cruz's shifting expressions, breaking down the precision of Crockett's language, calling it the moment the hearing turned upside down. And though the moment was over in seconds, the shock waves it unleashed would echo far beyond the walls of that hearing room. In the quiet that followed, one truth stood taller than the shouting. The interruptions and the arrogance, respect matters. Jasmine Crockett's 7th response wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a reminder that democracy cannot survive on volume alone. It requires dignity, patience, and the courage to speak even when others try to silence you. Her composure in the face of Cruz's chaos was more than a personal victory. It symbolized the strength of those who are constantly underestimated, those told to wait their turn, those forced to raise their voices just to be heard. Crockett showed that true power isn't about controlling the microphone. It's about controlling the message. The moral was clear. Arrogance crumbles when confronted with dignity. Theatrics may dominate the moment, but truth always defines the legacy. And on that day, Jasmine Crockett carved her place in the story not by shouting louder, but by refusing to be drowned out. It was a lesson that resonated far beyond Washington. Teachers replayed the clip in classrooms as an example of leadership under pressure. Parents shared it with their daughters as proof that silence doesn't mean weakness, and that strength can wear the face of calm. Crockett's victory wasn't about humiliating Ted Cruz. It was about elevating everyone who has ever felt overshadowed. And in doing so, she proved that respect, when defended with courage, can still shock the system. And so when the dust settled, the headline wrote itself. Ted Cruz had tried to drown Crockett out 6 times, but her 7th response silenced him and the entire room in an instant. What began as another attempt to control the narrative ended as a powerful reminder that arrogance is no match for truth, spoken with clarity and courage. Moments like this aren't just political theater, they're lessons in resilience. They show us that no matter how loud the interruptions, no matter how many times someone tries to steal the microphone, patience and precision will always find their way through. Jasmine Crockett didn't just win an exchange. She revealed a blueprint for handling disrespect and turning it into power. But here's the part that matters most. This story doesn't end here. These moments ripple outward, shaping how we see ourselves, how we speak up in our own lives, and how we hold leaders accountable. Every share, every replay, every conversation sparked by Crockett's response is part of a larger movement, a movement that says dignity is stronger than arrogance, and voices that refuse to be silenced will always rise. So if this moment inspired you, if you felt that surge of pride when she turned silence into thunder, don't let it stop here. Share this story. Subscribe for more. Be part of a community that believes truth deserves the last word, no matter how loud the interruption. Because in the end, respect always wins.